Show support Speaker Johnson.
I guess not answering is a better sign than his let's wait and see response from the week before.
So, are you going to protect Speaker Johnson?
Well, we'll see what happens with that. I think he's very good.
Did he brief you on his plan to do 4 separate foreign aid bills?
Good job you're doing.
So while Trump is seeing what'll happen, Marjorie Taylor Greene is really trying to make things happen.
Last night after midnight, we officially lost control of the House to the Democrats when the Democrats on the Rules Committee crossed the Rubicon and voted for the Republican rule to pass billions and billions of dollars to fund foreign wars with nothing to fund and secure our southern border. I've been working on the House floor just now, talking with other members, asking for co-sponsors in my motion to vacate Mike Johnson as Speaker because we have completely lost confidence in his leadership now that he is allowing Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer to completely control the House. This has never happened before in history, and I'm pleased to announce that I've just added another co-sponsor, and that is the great patriot from Arizona, Paul Gosar.
Marge complains of losing control of the House to Democrats after her party's constant infighting and historic ouster of their speaker, who was willing to do Trump's bidding, even though he knew better. She says they've got nothing to secure our southern border, except that GOP-friendly bill that she and other Republicans voted down. And for some reason, she's troubled and says that Hakeem Jeffries is controlling things after someone that looks a lot like Representative Greene loudly said this last week.
I don't care if the Speaker's office becomes a revolving door. If that's exactly what needs to happen, then let it be.
It's Marjorie's playbook. She looks for things to turn into chaos so that she can get attention for fundraising purposes. Then, when that chaos disrupts all the things that she claims to fight for, she goes nuclear on whoever isn't obeying her. She's currently in the phase of threatening to pull the vacate trigger, but she still sees value in threats and calls for Johnson to resign instead.
Johnson has betrayed America. He's betrayed Republican voters. Under his leadership, he's passed the Democrat agenda, passed the Biden administration's policies, and fully funded them. We're going to fight in Congress to do everything we can to stop this type of uniparty leadership. Mike Johnson's speakership is over. He needs to do the right thing to resign and allow us to move forward in a controlled process. Yeah. If he doesn't do so, he will be vacated.
What Greene calls uniparty leadership is actually the result of divided government, where elected officials may have to give and take with their colleagues that they don't always agree with for the sake of getting something done. She literally doesn't like our system of government and expects complete power, even though she hasn't even earned it. It's kind of like her president. There's not much foresight when your self-interests are the only thing that you care about. What sounds great for her addiction to power may not be so good for even her buddies in Congress.
So I'm just going to tell them.
Yeah.
So I heard that if and when the motion to vacate is introduced, that there will be immediate resignations of a couple of more moderate members of Congress. And in the event that that happens, that ultimately means it does go to a Democrat speaker. And so we're in a predicament.
So Democrats recognize the predicament that Marge is putting other Republicans into. And even though Hakeem Jeffries would be seen as the beneficiary of this second wave of ousting, Johnson's deal-making will probably get him enough support from Democrats to save his ass if Greene pulls that trigger.
We've been very honest in our assessment of the situation from the very beginning, including in the declaration that I made in late February. And at the appropriate time as House Democrats, we will have a conversation about how to deal with any hypothetical motion to vacate, which at this point hasn't been noticed. Moscow, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, and Gosar are quite a group.
Why aren't Democrats taking a position on whether to save Mike Johnson's job?
We're waiting to see if he is going to allow us to save our global security and make sure that America has its security.
It's also unclear, Anderson, how many Democrats will come to Mike Johnson's defense. Behind closed doors today, the message from the Democratic leaders is essentially keep your powder dry because they think that could extract more concessions from Johnson, and potentially then, after they get some more concessions, come to Johnson's defense.
So how's that for irony? Marge's constant threats over Johnson working with Democrats may lead to Democrats demanding more concessions from him in exchange for their votes to protect him from her. And for the dwindling crowd that still listens to everything Marjorie Taylor Greene says and somehow takes it as fact, they may not know that Johnson's slip to fund Ukraine came with elements that include things Republicans wanted, similar to the language in the border deal that he was a part of rejecting. They actually did have representation in these bills, but that ratio could tilt further away from their interests the closer we get to that motion to vacate.
Process to break the bills into 4 separate measures for consideration, and that is what we will have tomorrow. Everyone can vote their will and their constituents' desires on the Israel aid, the Ukrainian aid, the Indo-Pacific, and then our 4th national security package that has all of our innovations in it. Because we did this process, we got a better outcome here. We have a lot of innovations that the Senate did not consider. We include the Repo Act, which, as you know, is the use of corrupt Russian oligarchs' assets to help fund the resistance in Ukraine. We introduced the loan concept for the governmental assistance part. It'll be provided in a loan instead of a gift. We also included some really important sanctions on Russia and China and Iran, which I believe is the new axis of evil, and many of us do, and they are the ones who are the aggressors in this situation. The reality here is that if the House did not do this better policy and process, allowing for amendments on the floor in the process tomorrow, we would have had to eat the Senate supplemental bill. Even though it's not the perfect legislation, it's not the legislation that we would write if Republicans were in charge of both the House, the Senate, and the White House. This is the best possible product that we can get under these circumstances to take care of these really important obligations.
It's a classic MAGA case of shooting themselves in the foot over their disdain for the country not simply catering to their demands from the minority position that they're in. I guess it's a complicated concept that Mike Johnson figured out only after he became Speaker. But for the childlike minds of petulant conservative voices, it's minimized to good versus evil and how demons must have possessed Moses Mike Johnson.
We imagine that evil comes like fully advertised as such. Like evil people look like Anton LaVey.
Horns,
yeah.
Right. Black,
you know what I mean?
Black cloak.
Exactly.
Sickle.
Evil is an independent force that exists outside of people, that acts upon people. I really believe that. I've experienced it. A lot. And it's obvious. And what vessel do they choose? The weak. It's weak men and women who are instruments of evil. The weaker the leader, the more evil that leader will be. And the weaker the leader, that's why Mike Johnson, everyone's like, oh, Mike Johnson's such a nice guy. Well, I know Mike Johnson, and he's a perfectly nice guy to the extent that he's like polite and seems kind of meek and restrained, and he's not saying mother ever, you know what I mean? He's got like very sort of buttoned down affect, but he's a weak man. And that's the man you should be afraid of. The people who you should be less afraid of are the, headstrong, loud, don't care what anybody thinks. Yeah, those guys will go off track, but they're probably not going to abet, genocide or blow up the world in a nuclear exchange because they may be obnoxious, but they know who they are. Weak people just become a host for evil.